Blackhat Jaguar's X Saber Goyo deck is designed with the lethal efficiency of X Saber cards and the overwhelming offensive options provided by Goyo Synchro monsters like Goyo Guardian, King, and Predator. The EX Saber Goyo deck also features a host of key XX Saber warrior-type monsters. Each are important role players, like XX Saber Fulhelmknight, which allows the controlling player to special summon more X Saber monsters, X Saber Pashul, which is a tuner that can survive on the field long enough to summon any of the Synchro monsters in the extra deck, and XX Saber Fulhelmknight, which can do a combination of both, allowing the controlling player to negate an attack, or summon a lower level 10 Saber monster from the graveyard when it destroys an opponent's monster. Once one of these three role players takes the field and activates their effects, some big plays can be made, including the summoning of Goyo Synchro monsters, looping effects that allow the special summoning of X Saber monsters from the hand or the graveyard, and beatdown strats that can cripple an opponent's opportunities for retaliation, like the effects of XX Saber Hyunlei, which can destroy spell and trap cards when it is synchro summoned, or the powerful XX Saber Gottoms, which can be used to occasionally strip a random card from the opponent's hand and discard it to the graveyard. Without focusing too heavily on the literal XX Saber monsters, Blackhat Jaguar has allowed the EX Saber Goyo deck to have more than one way to efficiently slash, smash, and beat down an unprepared opponent. Joey Wheeler's Monster Raider recipe is by no means a standard deck, and without any spell or trap cards it can easily confuse a more prepared and elegant recipe that focuses on destroying any cards that are not monster cards. With monsters able to destroy cards on the field with flip effects or able to be special summoned under certain conditions, Monster Raider can be a threat if an opponent is not ready because of a bad draw, or a mistake in summoning or not placing appropriate defensive strats. Joey will almost certainly have a monster card to play each turn, and his Fiend Mega Cyber, which can be summoned when his opponent has at least 2 monster cards on the field, which can upturn an opponent's overeager or unbalanced defense. Joey also has Gores, the Emissary of Darkness, which can be special summoned, along with a powerful token monster whose attack and defense will match whatever damage was taken from a direct attack, while Joey controls no other cards. This powerful monster will make you rethink how to attack Joey, knowing that he could special summon this card afterwards and steal the duel. Excelling in both defensive and offensive options between turns, Kit Blade's X Saber strike recipe can counter and counter opponents with swift sure strikes to an opponent's monsters and life points through precision summoning and clever trap card control. Dueling this recipe is like facing a lethally coiled serpent. Boggart Knight, Fall Troll, and Gottoms Emergency Call will allow Kit Blade to special summon one or more X Saber monsters, directing the offense of most of the recipe's beatdown and swarm strats. Other cards, like Dark Soul and Emmersblade, let you search for X Saber monsters when they are destroyed, while Ragagora and Palamaro let you recover or manipulate X Saber monsters in the graveyard. Airbellum and Fulhelmknight are two tuners that can build into Synchro, summoning powerful X Saber monsters, as the overcount of monster cards in the recipe ensure that not only can lower-level monsters be sacrificed to summon stronger ones, but they can also be used for card destruction strats and summon manipulation plays, edging out an even and balanced defense to complement the ramped-up offense. Overall, Kit Blade's X Saber recipe is a killer, with legit strats to beat down and keep down an opponent or make a strong retaliatory play that can both cripple the opponent and ensure a direct strike against an opponent's life points, their cards on the field, or the cards in their hand. Kit Blade's XX Saber slash recipe is a hyper-focused swarm and slash display of synergistic beatdown strats. Triple copies of Tuner X Saber monsters, search and summon X Saber cards, and Synchro monsters will ensure that a speedy, accurate special summoning can occur at any time during the duel. The spell and trap cards remain focused on manipulating the opponent's ability to summon monsters, special summoning more X Saber monsters from the graveyard, and destroying an opponent's monsters for a free attack on their life points. In truth, this XX Saber slash recipe is a clean, efficient beatdown deck whose weakness could only be found in cards that disrupt synchro summoning. With multiple strats to special summon from the deck, graveyard, or hand, there are ways around such a weakness for the XX Saber slash. In addition to this versatility, Kit Blade's build leaves room for options both retaliatory and predatory in origin and execution, while still keeping defense in mind.
you